In the heart of UMWAYA village, where the red earth met the endless sky and palm trees swayed like dancing spirits, there lived a wealthy farmer named Chief Okonkwo. His compound was the largest in 7 villages, with barns that overflowed with yams, cassava, and golden maize. His livestock grazed on lands that stretched beyond where the eye could see, and his name was spoken with reverence in every market square. But Chief Okonkwo's wealth could not buy him peace. He had been married twice. His first wife, Adiz, had been the light of his existence, a woman whose laughter could chase away the darkest clouds and whose wisdom guided him through the hardest seasons. She had given him one son, Ifini, whose name meant nothing is impossible. Adiz had poured all her love, her prayers, and her dreams into that boy before a terrible fever took her to the ancestors when Ifini was only 12 years old. In his grief, Chief Okonkwo had remarried a woman named Obiojele, who came with promises of comfort but harbored ambitions as deep as the Niger River. Obiojele bore him one son, Vincent, and 4 daughters, Chinu, Amara, Ngozi, and Kelechi. From the moment she entered the compound, she began whispering poison into her children's ears about Ifini, the son who reminded everyone of the beloved first wife. The years passed like seasons, some bringing rain, others bringing drought. Chief Okonkwo grew older, his back bent from years of tilling the soil, his eyes dim from counting his blessings and his regrets. He knew his time was approaching, and he called his children to his bedside one humid evening when the air was thick with the scent of impending rain. "My children," he wheezed, his voice rattling like dried leaves, "I have worked this land since I was younger than the youngest of you. Everything I have, I leave to you. But listen carefully." The room fell silent except for the chirping of crickets outside. "To Ifini, my firstborn, son of my precious Adiz, I leave the largest portion, the eastern farmlands, the main house, half of the livestock, and the majority of the gold I have saved. You are to be the head of this family." Obiojele's face twisted like a cloth being wrung dry, but she said nothing. Vincent's jaw clenched so tight it seemed his teeth might crack. The 4 sisters exchanged glances sharp as hunting knives. To Vincent, Chinu, Amara, Ngozi, and Kelechi, I leave the western lands, the rest of the livestock, and the remaining gold. It is still a fortune that will sustain you and your children's children. 3 days later, Chief Okonkwo took his last breath, and the compound erupted in mourning. But behind the tears of Obiojele and her children lurked something else, a bitter seed that would soon grow into a terrible tree. After the burial rites, after the guests had eaten their fill and the drummers had gone home, the true nature of their hearts revealed itself. How dare he give that boy everything? Obiojele hissed one night, pacing like a caged leopard in her room while her children gathered around her. "Everything we have worked for, everything we deserve, handed to the son of that woman. He thinks he's better than us," Vincent spat, his eyes burning with resentment, walking around the compound like he's a king. "Our father was blind to favor him so. We cannot let this stand," Mother, Chine, the eldest daughter, said coldly. "There are ways to correct injustice." Amara nodded, her beautiful face twisted with ugliness. "Ways that no one would suspect." Ngozi and Kelechi, the youngest sisters, looked at each other and then at their mother. "What are you suggesting?" Kelechi whispered. Obiojele stopped pacing and looked at each of her children, her eyes gleaming like a snake's in the lamplight. "If Ifini were to leave us unexpectedly, the inheritance would pass to Vincent, would it not? As the next son, everything would become his. Our family would finally have what rightfully belongs to us." The word hung in the air like smoke, poison. But Ifini was no fool. He had watched his stepmother and siblings carefully over the years. He had seen the way they looked at him when they thought he wasn't watching, heard the whispers that stopped when he entered a room. His mother had told him before she died, "Ifini, my son, wisdom is knowing that not everyone who smiles at you loves you. Keep your eyes open and your heart guarded." So when his siblings suddenly began treating him with unexpected kindness, Ifini knew to be afraid. "Brother Ifini," Chime called out sweetly one morning as he prepared to go to the eastern farmlands. "You work too hard. Look how thin you've become." "We worry about you," Amara added, touching his arm with false concern. "You barely eat." "Let us bring you lunch today," Ngozi suggested, her smile too bright, too eager. "You shouldn't have to work all day without a proper meal." Ifini looked at his sisters and forced himself to smile. "You are too kind. Thank you, my sisters." Inside, his heart was pounding. He knew what this kindness meant. Vincent clapped him on the shoulder with a laugh that didn't reach his eyes. "We are family, brother. Father would want us to take care of each other. No." "Of course," Ifini replied smoothly, while his mind raced. He would need to be very careful. For a month, they continued this performance. His siblings brought him water when he was thirsty, helped him with small tasks, called him sweet brother and the best brother. Obia Jelly even prepared his favorite meals, her face arranged in expressions of motherly care. Ifini played along, accepting their kindness while never letting his guard down. He ate the meals they brought, but always after watching them take the first bites. He drank from cups only after seeing them drink first. He was a mouse living among cats, and he knew it. But even the most careful mouse can be caught. One scorching afternoon, when the sun beat down like a blacksmith's hammer and the air shimmered with heat, Ifini was working in the eastern fields, turning the soil for the next planting season. The work was backbreaking, and sweat poured down his face like rain. His four sisters appeared on the path, carrying a basket covered with a bright cloth. Their faces were arranged in concern, but their eyes held something else, something hungry and dark. "Brother," Chime called out, waving. "We saw you working and thought you must be exhausted." "We brought you food," Amara said, unveiling the basket. Inside was pounded yam with rich aguzi soup, peppered goat meat, and fresh palm wine. It looked and smelled delicious. "You're too kind," Ifini said, his throat tight with fear. But what could he do? To refuse would reveal that he knew. And he was so hungry, so tired, and the food looked so good. "Eat, eat." Ngozi urged, ladling the soup over the pounded yam. "You work too hard, sweet brother. The land will still be here tomorrow." "Yes, the best brother deserves the best meal," Kelechi added, her voice like honey over poison. Ifini took the bowl with trembling hands. His sisters watched him with barely contained anticipation, their eyes following every movement from bowl to mouth. He ate slowly, each swallow feeling like a stone dropping into his stomach. The soup was rich and flavorful, but underneath the spices there was something else, something bitter that clung to his tongue. His sisters exchanged glances. "How is it, brother?" Chine asked, her voice tight. "Delicious," Ifini managed, though his stomach was already beginning to churn. They watched him finish the meal, their smiles growing wider with each bite. After he drank the palm wine, they gathered the empty containers and patted his shoulder. "Rest well, brother," Amara said, and something in her tone made Ifini's blood run cold. "Yes, rest," Ngozi echoed. They left him there, their laughter floating back on the breeze like the cries of cruel birds. 20 minutes passed. Ifini tried to continue working, but his hands began to shake. 30 minutes, and pain erupted in his stomach like fire. His vision blurred, and the earth seemed to tilt beneath his feet. "No," he gasped, falling to his knees. "Please, no." The world spun around him, colors bleeding together like wet paint. He collapsed onto the red earth, his body convulsing, foam appearing at the corners of his mouth. The pain was unbearable, as if 1,000 thorns were tearing through his insides. In the distance, hidden behind a grove of palm trees, his sisters watched. "Is he?" Kelechi asked, her voice small. "Look at him writhing," Vincent said, having joined them. He had been watching from another vantage point. "The poison works well." "Mother was right," Chime said, her eyes cold. This was the only way. They watched until Ifini stopped moving, his body still on the ground. Then, satisfied that their plan had succeeded, they left him there for the vultures and the wild animals, their laughter echoing across the farmland. But fate, like the wind, blows in unexpected directions. Far from the eastern farmlands, in the poorest corner of UCHE village, there lived a man named Papa Namdi. He was a farmer too, but of the humblest kind, a man whose entire plot of land was smaller than Chief Okonkwo's smallest barn. He lived in a modest mud house with his wife and their daughter, Veronica, a girl of 16 with eyes bright as morning stars and a heart pure as fresh water. Veronica had never gone to school. While other children her age sat in classrooms learning to read and write, she helped her mother with the cooking and cleaning, or wandered the fields chasing butterflies. It was her greatest joy, following those delicate creatures as they danced from flower to flower, their wings painted with colors that seemed to hold pieces of heaven. That fateful afternoon, Veronica was doing exactly that, chasing a particularly beautiful butterfly with wings of orange and black, laughing as it led her further and farther from home. She followed it through tall grass and over small streams until she found herself in a part of the village she rarely visited. The butterfly landed on a plant near where Ifini lay. Veronica approached slowly, not wanting to startle it, and that's when she saw him, a young man lying motionless on the ground, his fine clothes covered in dust, his face twisted in agony. "Iwu!" she screamed, running to him. Sir, can you hear me?" Ifini's eyes fluttered open, but he couldn't speak. His lips moved, but only a weak moan emerged. Foam still bubbled at his mouth, and his body was cold despite the heat. Veronica had seen this before. 2 years ago, her younger brother had accidentally eaten poisonous berries and had looked just like this. Her grandmother, wise in the ways of herbs and plants, had saved him with a special mixture. With shaking hands, Veronica reached into the small pouch she always wore around her neck, a gift from her grandmother before she died. Inside was a tiny bottle no bigger than her thumb, filled with a dark liquid. "This is for emergencies," her grandmother had said. "It can draw out most poisons, but use it wisely, for I cannot make more." Without hesitation, Veronica uncorked the bottle and lifted Ifini's head onto her lap. She poured the bitter liquid into his mouth, massaging his throat to make him swallow. "Please work," she whispered. Please work." For several agonizing minutes, nothing happened. Then Ifini's body convulsed violently, and he vomited black bile onto the red earth. Once, twice, 3 times he purged, until there was nothing left inside him. His breathing, which had been shallow and ragged, began to deepen. But he was far from safe. "I have to get help," Veronica said, gently lowering his head to the ground. She ran faster than she had ever run in her life, her feet barely touching the earth, until she burst into her family's compound. "Papa! Papa!" she screamed. "A man is dying in the eastern fields. We have to help him." Papa Namdi didn't ask questions. He grabbed his son, Veronica's younger brother Chidi, and they followed her back to where Ifini lay. Together, the three of them managed to carry him home. For the next 3 days, Veronica and her mother nursed Ifini. They gave him water mixed with herbs to cleanse his blood, pressed cool cloths to his burning forehead, and prayed to their ancestors for his recovery. Papa Namdi stood guard, worried that whoever had poisoned this wealthy young man might come to finish the job. Meanwhile, at the Okonkwo compound, celebration filled the air. "He's gone," Chinwe announced that evening, her face carefully arranged in false grief. "I went to the eastern fields and saw. It was terrible. He must have been attacked." "Attacked?" someone asked. "By wolves," Amara added quickly. "You know how dangerous that area can be. They must have eaten him. There was nothing left but blood and torn cloth." Obiajeli wailed dramatically, but her eyes were dry. "My stepson. Oh, my poor stepson. The gods have taken him." Vincent said nothing, but his eyes gleamed with triumph as he looked around the compound, his compound now. All of it. That night, when everyone else had gone to bed, the family gathered in secret in Obiajeli's room. They broke out bottles of palm wine and began to celebrate. "To our good fortune," Obiajeli toasted, her face flushed with wine and victory. "To Vincent, the rightful heir," Chinu added with a cruel smile. They laughed. Oh, how they laughed. They laughed at how easy it had been, how perfectly their plan had worked, how Ifini had trusted them right to the end. "The fool actually believed we cared about him," Vincent sneered. "He ate every bite. And now he's feeding the wolves." Ngozi giggled, drunk on wine and malice. Their laughter echoed through the compound, but the ancestors were listening. And the ancestors remember everything. 3 months passed like clouds across the sky. In Papa Namdi's humble home, Ifini slowly returned to life. The poison had nearly killed him, and recovery was long and painful. But something else was healing too, something deeper than his body. For the first time since his mother's death, Ifini experienced what a true family felt like. There was no scheming, no hidden glances, no poisoned words disguised as love. Papa Namdi treated him like a son, though they had no blood between them. Mama Namdi fed him without expecting anything in return. Little Chidi looked up to him with genuine admiration. And Veronica, sweet Veronica who had saved his life, tended to him with a kindness that made his heart ache. "Why did you save me?" Ifini asked her one evening as they sat outside watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and purple. Veronica looked surprised by the question. "Because you needed help. Is there any other reason needed?" "My own family tried to kill me." "Then they were not truly family," she said simply. "Family is not just blood. It's the people who would carry you home when you fall." Ifini looked at this girl, this poor farmer's daughter who had never gone to school, who spent her days chasing butterflies, and saw more wisdom than he had found in a lifetime among the wealthy. "You should be in school," he said suddenly. "A mind like yours should not be wasted." Veronica laughed, a sound like bells. "School is for rich people's children. People like me chase butterflies." "Not anymore," Ifini said, and something in his voice made her look at him sharply. As his strength returned, so did his memory of that terrible day. And with memory came something else, a burning desire for justice. His family had tried to murder him. They had celebrated his death. They believed they had won. It was time to teach them that the dead can rise, and when they do, they remember everything. Ifini began to plan his revenge with the careful patience of a hunter stalking dangerous prey. He would not simply reveal himself. No, that would be too easy, too quick. They needed to suffer as he had suffered. They needed to lose everything as they had tried to take everything from him. He started with Vincent. His brother had wasted no time claiming the eastern farmlands as his own, despite them being clearly designated for Ifini in their father's will. Vincent now spent his days surveying his property, making plans for expansion, drunk on his stolen fortune. Ifini knew the land better than anyone, every path, every hidden stream, every dangerous spot. And he knew exactly where Vincent liked to walk each morning, along the ridge that overlooked the eastern valleys, the place where their father used to stand and survey his kingdom. It took Ifini 3 nights of careful work to set his trap. He dug a deep pit along Vincent's usual path, covering it with thin branches and grass so it looked like solid ground. At the bottom, he placed sharpened stakes, not enough to kill, but enough to maim. Then he waited. The morning came bright and clear. Vincent, dressed in fine clothes bought with Ifini's inheritance, walked along the ridge as he did every day. He was thinking about which parts of the land he would sell, which parts he would expand, how rich he would become. He never saw the trap. One moment he was walking, and the next the ground gave way beneath him. Vincent's scream pierced the morning air as he fell, landing hard on the stakes below. One pierced through his left leg, shattering the bone. The pain was immediate and excruciating. "Help!" Vincent screamed. "Someone help me!" It took hours for workers to find him and pull him out. By then, the damage was done. His leg was ruined, twisted at an unnatural angle, the bone splintered beyond repair. Even after the village healer had done her best, Vincent would walk with a severe limp for the rest of his life, his days of strutting around the compound over forever. How did this happen? Obijelli demanded, but Vincent couldn't answer. He had no idea. The trap had appeared out of nowhere, as if the land itself had reached up to punish him. Ifini, watching from a distance, felt no pity. This was only the beginning. Next came the sisters. Chinu, the eldest, was engaged to a wealthy trader from the neighboring village. The marriage would bring great fortune and prestige. She spent her days bragging about her upcoming wedding, about the life of luxury that awaited her. But Ifini had not forgotten how she had smiled when she poisoned him, how she had called him sweet brother while planning his death. He drafted a letter in careful handwriting that could not be traced back to him. In it, he detailed how Chime had been seen with another man, a poor farmer's son, in compromising situations. He described meetings that never happened, promises that were never made, but written with such convincing detail that they seemed real. He sent this letter to Chime's betrothed. 3 days later, the engagement was broken. The trader, a proud man who valued reputation above all else, would not be made a fool. Chime's screams echoed through the compound when she received the news. Her sisters tried to comfort her, but the damage was done. Word spread quickly in their small village, and no man would come near her now. For Amora, he employed a different strategy. She was courting the son of a palm wine tapper, a match that seemed beneath her but which she pursued because the young man was handsome and easily manipulated. Ifini learned their meeting places and their habits. Then he arranged for Amora's supposed love letters, which he forged with skill, to reach the young man's suspicious mother. The letters painted Amora as a gold digger who mocked her suitor behind his back, calling him stupid and easily controlled. The young man's mother, fierce and protective, ensured the relationship ended immediately with harsh words and public humiliation. For Ngozi, engaged to a teacher from the mission school, Ifeanyi spread rumors through careful whispers to the right people, rumors about gambling debts and stolen goods, none of it true, but all of it plausible enough to cause doubt. The teacher, a cautious man who valued his reputation, decided the risk was too great. Another engagement broken. For Kelechi, the youngest sister who had giggled about him feeding the wolves, Ifeanyi waited until she fell in love with a palm oil merchant's son. Then he arranged for the young man to discover that Kelechi had apparently spoken ill of his family, mocked his deceased mother, and called them beneath her station. The merchant's son, devoted to his mother's memory, ended things with cold finality. One by one, Ifeanyi's sisters saw their futures crumble. Their prospects dried up like streams in the dry season. The life of comfort and status they had murdered him for slipped through their fingers like sand. But Ifeanyi saved his most carefully crafted revenge for Obiageli. His stepmother, the architect of his attempted murder, had begun living as the true head of the household. With Vincent crippled and her daughters' marriages falling apart, she ruled with iron authority, managing what remained of the family's wealth with greedy hands. Ifeanyi knew her weakness, her pride, and her superstition. He began by having strange things happen around the compound. Footsteps in the night that led nowhere. Doors that opened on their own. Voices whispering Ifeanyi's name in the darkness. He paid village children to spread tales of a spirit seen in the eastern farmlands, a young man in fine clothes, walking the paths, his eyes burning with otherworldly fire. Obiageli, despite her cunning, was deeply superstitious. The whispers reached her ears, and fear began to take root in her heart. Then Ifeanyi arranged for the village priest, a man he had known since childhood and who owed his family a debt, to have a vision during a public ceremony. The priest, in a trance, spoke of a great injustice, of a son betrayed by his family, of ancestors angry at the breaking of sacred bonds. The dead cry out for justice, the priest proclaimed. Until amends are made, misfortune will follow this house like a shadow. The entire village heard, and everyone knew which house he meant. Paranoia consumed Obiageli. She began to see Ifeanyi's face in every shadow, hear his voice in every whisper of wind. She demanded stronger charms from the priest, spent money on elaborate cleansing rituals, but nothing brought her peace. The guilt she had buried deep began to surface, rotting her from the inside out. Her health declined rapidly. Her hair turned white almost overnight. Her hands shook constantly, and she could not sleep without nightmares of her stepson rising from the grave, asking her why. Why had she done it? 6 months after Ifeanyi's death, the Okonkwo compound was a shadow of its former glory. Vincent limped through the halls, bitter and in constant pain. The sisters, unmarried and prospects gone, spent their days in misery, fighting among themselves. And Obiageli, once proud and cunning, was now a trembling ghost of herself, jumping at shadows and crying out in the night. The time had come for the final act. Ifeanyi chose the day of his father's memorial service, 6 months after his death, when tradition demanded the family gather to honor his memory and celebrate the deceased's life. The entire village would be in attendance. He had Papa Namdi's family come with him, though they were confused about why. Veronica looked at him with questions in her eyes, but he only smiled and said, "Trust me." The ceremony was held in the compound's large courtyard. Palm wine flowed, food was abundant, and the village elders sat in places of honor. Obiageli and her children, dressed in black, sat at the front, accepting condolences with faces arranged in grief. As the priest began the invocations, a murmur started at the back of the crowd. People were turning, pointing, their faces registering shock and confusion. Through the crowd walked Ifini. He was dressed in his father's finest clothes, his head held high, his eyes burning with righteous fury. The crowd parted before him like water, whispers exploding into shocked exclamations. "It's a ghost! Ifini! But he's dead! He's risen!" Obiageli saw him and screamed, a sound that pierced through the celebration like a knife. She fell from her seat, her eyes wide with terror. "No, no, you're dead. You're supposed to be dead." Vincent tried to stand, but his crippled leg gave way. He fell, staring up at his brother with disbelief and dawning horror. The sisters clutched at each other, their faces white as chalk. Ifini walked through the crowd until he stood before the place where his father's memorial statue had been erected. The silence was so complete that the sound of a falling leaf would have echoed like thunder. "Good people of UMWAYA," Ifini began, his voice carrying to every corner of the courtyard. "I am told that I was eaten by wolves, that the beasts of the field devoured me and left nothing but blood and bone. But as you can see, I am very much alive, and I have a story to tell." For the next hour, he told them everything. How his siblings had pretended kindness to gain his trust. How they had brought him poisoned food. How they had watched him collapse and left him to die. How they had celebrated his death while drinking palm wine and laughing. The crowd listened in horrified silence. But the ancestors had other plans, Ifini continued, his voice thick with emotion. "They sent me an angel disguised as a simple girl chasing butterflies." He gestured to Veronica, who stood at the back of the crowd, her eyes wide. "Veronica, daughter of Papa Namdi, found me dying in the fields. She saved my life with medicine from her grandmother and brought her family to care for me. They, who had nothing, gave me everything. They, who were strangers, showed me what true family means." Papa Namdi and his family looked embarrassed by the attention, but the crowd was already murmuring approval. Ifini turned to face Obiageli and her children. His stepmother was still on the ground, trembling. Vincent had tears running down his face, not of remorse, but of fear for what would come next. "I could have you arrested," Ifini said quietly. "Attempted murder is a serious crime. You would go to prison, perhaps for life." Hope flickered in their eyes. "But I will not do that. Instead, I will let you live with what you've done. I will take what is rightfully mine according to my father's will, and you will take what was given to you, nothing more, nothing less. The land you tried to steal returns to me. The wealth you tried to claim through murder will be used for good, and you will live out your days knowing that your greed destroyed you more completely than any prison ever could." He turned to address the elders. "I call upon the council to witness. I am returning from death, and I claim what my father left to me." The elders, shocked but bound by tradition and law, could only nod. The will had been clear, and Ifini was alive to claim his inheritance. But Ifini wasn't finished. "Papa Namdi, please come forward," he called. The poor farmer, confused, made his way through the crowd with his wife, son, and daughter. Ifini knelt before them, a gesture that made the crowd gasp, for a wealthy man did not kneel before the poor. "You saved my life when my own blood tried to take it. You gave me shelter when I had nowhere to go. You showed me kindness when I had known only betrayal." His voice broke. "You gave me back my faith in humanity. There is no inheritance, no wealth, no fortune that can repay such a debt. But I can try." He stood and addressed the crowd. "From this day forward, Papa Namdi and his family will want for nothing. I give them the western farmlands, yes, the lands that were designated for those who tried to kill me. They will have livestock, resources, and workers to help them prosper. This is the least I can do." Papa Namdi tried to protest. "Sir, we need nothing. We did only what was right." "And that is exactly why you deserve everything," Ifini said firmly. Then he turned to Veronica, who was trying to hide behind her father, overwhelmed by the attention. "And you, Veronica," Ifini said softly, his eyes meeting hers. "You should have been in school all these years instead of chasing butterflies, though thank the ancestors for those butterflies. From tomorrow, you will attend the best school in the region. I will pay for everything, your books, your uniforms, your fees. You will learn to read and write. You will become educated. And when you are ready, you will choose your own path in life, whatever that may be." Veronica's eyes filled with tears. "School," she whispered. "Really? Really?" Ifini confirmed, smiling at her. "You saved my life, Veronica. Let me give you the life you deserve." The crowd erupted in cheers and applause. The elders nodded their approval. This was justice, true justice, not revenge, but restoration and reward. Obiajeli and her children were left with their portion of the inheritance, as Chief Okonkwo's will had specified. But they would live under the shadow of their crimes, shunned by the village, their reputations destroyed. Vincent would carry his injury as a permanent reminder. The sisters would grow old unwed, their futures stolen by their own greed. And Obiajeli would spend her remaining days haunted by the memory of the stepson she had tried to murder. As the memorial celebration continued, now transformed into a celebration of justice and redemption, Ifini stood with the Namdi family. Veronica stood beside him, still in shock at the turn her life had taken. "You know," she said quietly, "if I hadn't been chasing that butterfly that day, I never would have found you." "Then I owe my life to a butterfly," Ifini replied with a smile, "and to the kind-hearted girl who followed it." "What will you do now?" she asked. Ifini looked out over the land that was rightfully his, at the compound where he had known both love and betrayal, at the village where he had died and been reborn. "I will honor my father's memory by being the man he raised me to be. I will use this wealth to help others, to lift up families like yours who have good hearts but lack opportunity. I will make sure that goodness is rewarded and evil is exposed." He looked down at Veronica. "And I will make sure that one brilliant girl gets the education she deserves so she can change the world, or at least chase butterflies with a better understanding of their species." Veronica laughed, the sound pure and joyful. In the years that followed, the story of Ifini and the butterfly became legend in UCHE and beyond. Veronica did go to school, and she excelled beyond anyone's expectations. She became a teacher herself, eventually returning to the village to educate the children of poor families who, like her, deserved a chance. Ifini managed his father's wealth with wisdom and generosity, becoming known throughout the land as a fair and just leader. He never forgot the lesson that near-death had taught him, that true wealth is not measured in land or gold, but in the quality of one's character and the kindness one shows to others. And sometimes, when the afternoon sun painted the sky in shades of orange and gold, Ifini and Veronica would walk through the eastern fields together, the very fields where he had almost died. They would watch the butterflies dance among the flowers, and they would remember that sometimes the smallest, most delicate things carry the greatest power. For a butterfly's wings had led to a billionaire's salvation, and a poor farmer's daughter had proven that real richness lies not in what you have, but in who you are.